the way of the gauges. Super Tech, won't you take me far away from this crawl space? Yeah. Now it's time for me to tell you about Young Selling Tech, Super Tech's arch rival and nemesis with powers comparable to Super Tech. What kind of powers, you ask? How about the powers to diagnose good compressors as bad and sell a new unit? The power to pull cores and tell the customer it's flat? Yeah, it's flat. Yeah, good tech. How about the power to sell Remy Halos? The power to sell Remy Halos, Sarah. That's the Super Tech.
Okay.
Welcome to another episode of HVACR Verse. Today I got my wife in here, and I have another lovely assistant, Miss Maddie. You want to say hi? Well, I don't think they can hear you. You got to come over here.
Hi.
Come on over here. Say
Hi.
Okay. So, I brought my wife in. This is my wife, Sarah. And I want to talk about some of the struggles that in the trades, just not in air conditioning alone, but all of them, right? All the trades, they deal with this, whether you're an electrician. I'm not going to degrade carpenters and stuff, but it's not as big of a deal when it comes to carpentry and stuff. You don't really run into emergencies too often. But plumbers, HVAC technicians, refrigeration technicians, we run into this issue where we don't think about our spouse, right? So is that fair to say? Like we often forget that there's a struggle for our spouse too, even though we are doing the work and we have some issues, right?
I think you phrased it better the second time. You forget that there's a struggle at home, and it's not just a struggle when you're frustrated doing your work.
So what are some tips and tricks for being with someone that's in the trades?
I think it's similar to any relationship that you really have to establish certain communication patterns, a balance, and just a lot of boundaries. I think it's more obvious in the trades. I did not come from a family where trades were a thing. My family are very white collared, and so I was more used to that 9 to 5 schedule. And dating you and eventually marrying you, it's been an adjustment to get used to the idea that the trades can occur and your work can occur any time of day, 24/7. And so a lot of open communication about what your job is requiring, what you have to do. But then when it is time for you to be home with us, having that boundary of, okay, now it is family time. I'm home. It's time to be with my family.
So let me ask you, when we first started dating, what did you think? Because you were working 2 jobs. You were a teacher and you were working for your dad, because we were working for your dad for he owned restaurants. So we really didn't think too much about it. We didn't have kids. We didn't have struggles. We were both making really good money. No, that's because you were working 2 jobs. So did you see there being a problem in the beginning?
At the beginning, not really, because like you said, I was busy. When we had first started dating, I just started.
Sorry, I had to stop it. My daughter was rudely interrupting.
Oh, she's just being what 6-year-olds are. But
I was asking, what did you see being a problem going in? Like, did you think there was going to be any problems?
well, I don't think I really saw it when we first started dating. Because like you said, I was very busy. I not only was working 2 jobs, but I was working on my master's at the time. I had just started my master's when we first started dating. So my life was busy as well. And so you're being busy and you're working all of these odd hours didn't seem as weird or as odd because I had 1.5 million things going on too. Um, but also we were single individuals, and I can take care of myself when I need to, and you can take care of yourself, and there's not that undue burden put on me because you're gone. It When it really started to show was when we got married. I stopped working 2 jobs. I had my master's, so I started to have more alone time, which when we were just married and no kids wasn't horrible. I could see my friends do things that adults do without children. But then our first baby came along, and that's when things got really hard, was because was there's a lot of needs that an infant has, and with your schedule being so unregulated, not 9 to 5, not a situated component, it at times really put a lot of pressure back on me because I I had the set schedule. So no matter what, we knew, okay, I can do this. I can make sure the baby's okay. I can take care of the baby versus your schedule was so up in the air, we didn't always know.
So, did the money make it any better?
I mean, they say money can't buy happiness, but that's not true to some extent. I think money can't buy all of the happiness in the world. I think if you have all the money in the world, that doesn't mean you're happy. But money helps when we're not having to worry about where we're going to pay our mortgage from, and when we're able to take trips and able to do things that we enjoy. That helps the situation when I don't have to worry about, can we afford these diapers and those kinds of things. That helps, but it isn't the end all be all. It makes things more palatable, but it doesn't solve it.
Yeah. So let's take, for example, I left my facilities job and I took on another job as it paid more, right? It did pay more.
Yeah.
But the downside to that was, originally when we first took that job offer, it was, hey, you're going to do controls and you're going to manage controls, and that's what you're in charge of, right? And that quickly turned into, hey, can you manage technicians? Hey, can you manage all these national accounts? And I was working for this national refrigeration company. We were a company that was national, and it turned into, hey, I need you to come out to, what was the first place? Colorado, or was it?
I think Colorado was the first place. You traveled to Colorado, California, Hawaii, a
Yeah.
number of places during the course of your employment for them. I think the issue with that job in particular wasn't necessarily just the fact that it was national, although that played a big role. There was a lot of things that were promised that you didn't end up getting um, from that job. For example, initially you were promised you wouldn't be traveling all the time, because that was a concern, as I was pregnant with our second child when you took that job. And I ended up giving birth to our second child during the course of you taking that job, and it was COVID. So there was a lot of factors in play with it, but the biggest one ended up being their lack of consistency with the promise of, we're not going to make you travel all the time. And then you did travel all the time, which left me basically functioning like a single mom, but not a single mom.
What was I gone? Like an average of 2 weeks a month?
It was pretty much, you'd be home for a week and be gone for the next two. It
Yeah.
was pretty consistent. You would come home maybe for the weekend and then be gone again. And while all this is going on, I'm still working. I'm still doing my job. But what that ended up leaving is, anytime our 6-year-old, who was 5 at the time, well, 4 at the time, and in preschool, anytime she got sick, that was me taking off. Anytime the baby got sick, that was me taking off. Anytime anyone had to go to the doctor, the dentist, any grocery trips, anything like that, that had to fall on me because you weren't physically here to do it. And it became really hard. And I know that even just the bond with our second child didn't form as easily for you as it did with the first child, because of the amount of times you were gone.
So I know that during the course, the reason why we left the facilities job was one, they were not meeting our demands and our needs. And I know I say a lot, don't demand stuff, but I was worth way more than what I was making, guys.
But
Uh,
also just like they weren't meeting our demands in the sense of like you had a new family, a
yeah,
very young family, and they were constantly having you gone and unable to be with your young family.
I so with that, I know my wife remembers these times. We were in San Diego. This is way, 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 and I don't know if she thought about it at that point in time, but when we were still dating, we went to San Diego for her little brother's 21st birthday. And I think it was 3 o'clock in the morning, if I recall correctly.
It may have been later because it was the night that we took him out for his 21st.
Yeah,
And it was that evening or early
yeah.
morning when you got the phone
I,
call.
I had a technician call me, and I want to say it was 3 o'clock in the morning. Had a technician call me about a problem that they were having, and they couldn't figure it out. And this is not an exaggeration of how it went down. I said, "Did you check this?" And they were like, "No, that's not the problem." And I said, "But did you check this and this?" And they said, "No, it's not the problem. What's wrong with this thing?" And I said, "If you know what's not wrong with it, then you should know what to do." And I just said, "F you," and hung up on him, if I recall correctly.
I don't recall the exact conversation. I was very tired and probably a bit
But
hungover at
we
that point,
remember that was Mr. Murray.
but it was, yes, it was not my favorite circumstance. It was our first trip ever together, and being woken up at 3 in the morning on vacation is not what anyone
But let me ask
wants.
you, at that point in time, did you think, is this what I'm getting into?
No, honestly, the at the facilities job you had, the calls at night were less regular, but you were also working at night, so it's kind of skewed. Kind of looking at it now and thinking about it now, you were working that night shift, that mid shift, and
For part of the
so
time, yeah.
part of my not seeing the calls at night could have been that, but the calls at night didn't seem as bad. It wasn't until you started that industrial job that we really started to get the calls all the time. And that was a boundary issue and not necessarily created entirely by you. A lot of it was created by your boss. Sorry guys, our dog is wanting to be a part of the show. Uh Part of it was created by your boss or whoever it was who ended up giving out your personal number to clients because you would turn your work phone on silent during times in which we were sleeping or things needed to be handled elsewhere, and then your personal phone started ringing all the time and you were constantly on the phone. And I think the most obvious time of you not setting the boundaries even still is our vacation examples, like when we went to Mexico for my parents' 35th, and you sold some equipment from Mexico, from an entire other country, but we were on vacation with my extended family, our children, and so like it's just that boundary of okay, this is the time where I'm supposed to be prioritizing my family. Please don't be interrupting unless it is a true emergency, and that was not a true emergency.
So I want to preface it this. I wasn't on the phone the entire time we were in Mexico. Yes, I took those two phone calls. One when we were at the pool, and one I was laying in bed. Um, they were both 15 minutes long, so it was like half an hour the entire time we were there for 6 days. So give me a little slack there.
Okay, that one was a small example, but it's just that is a commonality with you. And I think if we're talking about advice for people in the trades, that that is the biggest advice. It's the thing we still struggle the most with, and I think it's the biggest advice that I would say is just helping to find a firm boundary of like when it's okay to contact me for on-call style stuff or extra help, and when the business better be burned into the ground when you call me, kind of deal. And it is very different because I, as a teacher, I do get emails at all hours of the night and I do get contact from parents, but I don't have the expectation of an immediate response or the need of an immediate response. It's something that I can provide a solution to Monday morning. But it is not always in your industry something that a solution can be provided by Monday morning. It has to happen earlier. But there has to be the boundaries.
So my philosophy is, and I'm not saying it's the right one, I'm going to take those phone calls if they're making me money. Now, in the instance in Mexico, those made us money. We sold I sold two pieces of equipment to a customer. Hey, I made some money there. Now, the instances like where I don't know if you remember that time when we were having margaritas and Andrew called me up and goes, "Hey, put me in the matrix. I can't figure out what's going on with this freezer." And I explained to him what was going on with this freezer while we're trying to enjoy ourselves. Um, I think it was she wasn't even one yet.
I don't remember that particular example, but I can think of many
Yeah.
examples in which we were doing something or planned to do something that day and you ended up not being able to do it. For example, we had talked about taking our children to the Mario movie and we haven't ended up doing it yet because you got called in a couple weekends in a row and that was going to
I,
be our
I
time.
should preface that with I didn't get called in. I have there's some unexperienced guys that work for me. I'm not gonna lie, and I had to go make sure that we didn't destroy something that could go south really quick, which it almost did. Right.
Mhm.
So now I know that money isn't everything. It sure does help, right?
Mhm.
But the times that I do turn my phone off, what happens?
I mean, sometimes when you do end up turning your phone back on, there are more problems, but that is one of those things about a boundary that it's true in education too. If I wait until Monday morning sometimes to answer an email, by Monday morning, that email ends up being a larger project than it was Friday afternoon. But I also say I only get paid for these times and I have to have time for myself and my family and set that boundary. And it's hard. I was not always good at it either. You've had the same conversation with me about taking home my work and taking home what I am doing, and I've had to set boundaries. And you've done better at times and then worse at other times. But that's honestly for the trades, I would say the biggest thing is respecting that boundary of your time with your family.
So now with your job, you're a teacher. With my job, there does come like I'm not exactly paid by the hour, right?
Mhm.
In my position, I'm not a
Correct.
technician anymore. I'm not paid by the hour. I'm paid a salary.
Mhm.
But that understanding of that salary comes with I receive bonuses based upon how well my department does, and that's how we make extra money. Versus being a technician, I worked overtime. I sold equipment. I did that. So that's just kind of like where I want to lead that is like it wasn't just like I'm just working a lot of hours for no reason.
Well, no, I don't think I ever claimed that. I just said there has to be a point. And I know it's part of it is you. Part of it is your perspective in life. You're very much like EJ, the man who raised you, your dad. And you're very much like him in the sense of I have a family, I need to provide for them, and I'm going to put that first in everything I do. But it really isn't what should be put first. What should be put first is the family and then providing for them with that is a part of that. But yes, you're not just taking calls for no reason. Like they are important reasons, but there also has to be a time where you say, okay, the world cannot end just because I'm not answering the phone. That's not going to happen. You've got to step back. And I think that's harder for you because you're in a training position now. You're in a managerial position. You are a trainer, and it's a lesson that all new teachers learn. And that's when do I step back and let them fail so they will learn? Because if I'm always bailing them out of the hardships, then it's me who's learning, not them. It's me who's doing the work, not them. I become their safety net and they won't always have me. So, how do I step back to let them fail and so they can do their own safety net that isn't dependent on me?
So going to as service technicians that are on call, and you've dealt with this now for a while with me. what are the things that go through your head when I'm getting a phone call? Let's say it's 6 o'clock in the evening, freezer's down, they need me right away, they're about to lose thousands of dollars in product. We'll just say that. What goes through your head? Now, I'm asking what goes through your head, not asking for your scientific
No,
approach. I'm asking what
I
actually goes
know.
through your head.
So there are two different on call that we've experienced since we've been together. There was the way it was at the facilities job where it was set days. And that was a lot easier to cope with because I knew like those counted basically as work days for me. I knew, hey, he's on call Saturday and Sunday. We can't plan anything that involves him. I will just plan my own things. And then there are jobs like what you have now and what you had with the more industrial job, where on call means something is broken and you could have to come in and they're gonna, like you said, lose thousands of dollars of product if you don't come in now and you have to come in and it's 3 a.m. or whatever. The first couple times it's not that bad. You're like, oh, it sucks. He has to go in, and I feel bad for you, and it sucks for us, but it's not that bad. It's when it gets overwhelming, and the summers tend to be the worst in your industry, and when it's constant. He's going in, he's going in, he's going in. Oh, I had dinner cooked and he was about to sit down for dinner and he's going in again and he's been in 5 days this week. That's when it starts to become just that natural start of self-doubt of like, okay, is this work? If I hadn't heard the phone call, I would be pretty suspicious right now. And just that feeling of, okay, is this work or is he prioritizing something else? And I know it can be ridiculous because it's not necessarily that you're choosing that. You are doing your job, but it is natural for someone to wonder when you're gone that much and you're having to leave that much in the middle of things. And
I know you've asked me, who is she? I know you said you were joking, but
I have not necessarily thought you were cheating per se, but there have definitely been the feelings of, is he leaving because he no longer values me? And that is the hardest one to deal with. And it was really hard after we had our kids, and I suffered with my own issues from having kids that are completely natural and occur. But yeah, the world doesn't stop because you have kids, and your job doesn't stop because you have kids, and that made it especially difficult. And it still is rough at times with it.
so how did you handle those?
I'm going to be honest, that still changes from day to day. Like, I'm still not great about it. Sometimes I just have to kind of distract myself, shut my brain off. It's easier if I have work projects or things to do with the kids, or I have something scheduled to do. But the reality is I'm not always going to have something scheduled to do. It's easier to keep myself busy, but it's not always a solution.
So what did me sharing my hobbies with you, did that help out any, or
I'm
did that just include you on something and it really didn't change anything?
It helps some because one of the big issues you will remember we had is that not only did you have limited time with us, but then on your limited time with us, you were then going out and doing these hobbies that the kids and I couldn't necessarily participate in. And if the kids can't participate in it, either we have to find a babysitter or one of us has to stay home. And if you're doing it, then I'm the one staying home. And so it helped when you started incorporating things that you wanted to do on your free time. So we no longer had you feeling like you couldn't do what you wanted to do, and then the girls and I feeling like you weren't home or prioritizing us. It gave us the time together, and it helped support both areas, kill two birds with one stone in a sense. But we also haven't incorporated every hobby together for a reason, because you still do need your time apart, and there are some things that are just not my style. But it helps some. It doesn't solve everything, but it did take away from the, okay, well, even on his time home, he's doing something else.
And no, my hobbies are not drugs; they're all active hobbies.
And sometimes that,
except for the off-roading. That's not really active. That's just me driving, but it does beat my body up for some reason. I feel so tired afterwards. And I've taken the family out going off-roading a few times, and
But the activity level of your hobbies is part of the problem. Like we can't take our children out hunting.
Yeah.
And Harper, up until recently, she's our youngest. She's just turned 3. She was too young to go out bow shooting, and we did try to do it a couple times, taking her out bow shooting. And all of the times we tried it, we regretted it because she really was too young to do that. She wasn't able to self-entertain at all. She couldn't participate in the activity, which left her doing things that she shouldn't do or getting frustrated with us and having her own tantrums.
Do you like archery, Maddie? The bow. You like your bow? Yeah?
And so that's part of the problem with some of the hobbies you had is they are so active and they were more limiting on what we could do with young children. And
Yeah.
I know like your brother and sister-in-law, Anthony and Katie, are in the same boat where Anthony works in a trade and they don't have nearly as much of an issue with it because their kids are older and can participate in the activities if needed. So it's definitely a lot harder when you have young children who what you can do with them is limited.
So, sharing my hobbies with you guys, that helped a little bit. So when in the downtime that I had away from work, I could still do some of the stuff that I enjoy, and it involved you guys. Now I know there's things where like you do not enjoy golfing. I get it.
I don't mind Top Golf, but
I love golfing.
regular golfing is not my style.
I even bought my kid like a nice set of clubs, and I don't think she's ever used them except for one time.
We didn't really have a chance this winter. You intended to, but then things got crazy with just things at home.
But I get that you're not into the hunting and you enjoy the rewards of it. I know you do.
Well, I don't mind cooking with it, and it does save us a lot of money, but it's not really my thing.
I get that. The off-roading. I just want to like say, if you have hobbies that your family can join in on, let them join in on some of those hobbies, and find some productive hobbies, guys. Because I get that like some people think everything's a hobby, but find a productive hobby that actually keeps your mind active and busy, because you'll forget about a lot of stuff. Like when I go out off-roading, I forget about a lot of stuff and I don't think about the problems. It's kind of an outlet to let go of everything. When I go out shooting my bow, I forget about everything. I just focus on shooting my bow. Find that kind of stuff that you can enjoy with your family and have a little bit of time with them. I bought my wife a bow. I bought my oldest a bow. We've gone out sometimes and shot the bows. I'm not a good bow instructor. I'm not a good instructor, period.
Well, I had a long conversation with Katie, your sister-in-law, my sister-in-law, about this, and we think maybe it's a married life thing. Maybe when you're married, you shouldn't try and take the complete instructor position in the relationship with something. Or maybe it's just our particular personalities, but she seems to have the same issue when Anthony tries to teach her something of it just naturally puts a little bit more strain. So we moved a bit away from you teaching me things. I'm stubborn and you're hot-headed, and it's not necessarily the best combination when it comes to teaching things.
I'm always right.
And yeah.
So money helps. Communication helps. Sharing hobbies help. I know that a lot of times when I get home from work, I tell you ask, as soon as I get to the door, how was your day? And what is my answer 90% of the time?
That you don't want to talk about it. But I think we might have a unique situation here. So because I'm a teacher, I spend my day with children. And so by the time, and even though they're preteens and teens, it's still not the same. So by the time you get home, I am looking for adult interaction, and you are my adult interaction. And when you don't want to talk to me, who wants to talk, that then creates our own separate set of animosity. But that may be semi-unique to our positions here. But I could imagine for people, especially people who have stay-at-home wives, partners, or whatever, that could be even worse for them because at least, I am getting an outlet with teenagers and teenagers and preteens to talk some and talk about some things. But you, with small children, you do a lot of listening, a lot of answering random questions, but not a lot of actually getting to talk. And I think that that person needs an outlet by the time their spouse gets home. And when you're getting home tired and beat down from the sun and frustrated, you don't want to talk. So it creates tension.
So let me ask you this. You don't think that I'm dealing with, it may not be children, but I'm talking to adults all day long and having to answer. I'm sorry, people. If you're a customer and you're watching this, you guys have some serious stupid questions, and nothing in this world is free. Okay, so my wife has said, and this is a teacher saying it, there are such thing as stupid questions.
That is correct. There are such thing as stupid questions. They're questions that really you put no thought into before asking. For example, my favorite one is, where do I put my name? I don't know. The line that says name next to it might be a good start.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about this coming from small children like our daughter who's in kindergarten. I'm talking about, I teach 7th through 12th grade. You should be able to figure out where to put your name on the paper.
No, but
by
like,
that point.
I just try to make you understand, like, I deal with people that are so-called adults, right? Even my employees are so-called adults.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that word so-called because how often when you really pry the situation out of me, how often do you hear it and you go, is that really a thing out of a 35-year-old man that's happening?
But I think it's important to understand, to some extent, it's context of what you know. Because the reason why then there's no such thing as stupid questions comes about is because if I have all this context in the world about mathematics, because that is the subject that I teach, and then I come up to you and start posing what seems like very basic informational stats about mathematics, and you ask me a question that's very basic, to me that feels like a stupid question. But if you have no background in that, that does. And I think that's some of what you deal with is you have a lot of people who don't have the backgrounds that you do, and it becomes frustrating over time answering questions that you feel like you shouldn't need to answer. They should be self-explanatory. But as you always say, street smart is not the same for everyone.
That's not what I say. I don't say street smart. I say,
oh, it's common sense is not all that common.
Yeah,
there we go.
Common sense is not
You're
common.
right.
If it was common, everybody would have it.
You're right, because we grew up two very different lives. You grew up in Florida, much different, just in general, much different than me, who grew up here in Arizona and in a middle-class neighborhood at a very good school. And
she's saying I grew up in the ghetto.
And we just grew up very different lives. And you grew up with a family that's very hands-on with machines and those kinds of things and fixes things. Your grandfather was.
Yeah, my grandfather.
And you had that sources around you. I had none of that around me. And so when it comes to fixing things and tools, you'll say, like, go get this. And I'll be like, I have no idea what that is. And you're like, how do you not know what that is? I have no context to pull on to identify.
My grandfather owned an air conditioning company, so that's where I started doing this from.
But even with that, your biological dad, is he works in the trades too. And your brother's in the trades, and he may not have always been when you were growing up, but he had similar interest to you in taking things apart and building things. And that's not necessarily the same. My older brother was into building things, but it was computers, not the same kind of building that you guys do. And then my dad was a restaurant manager and owner of a restaurant. He didn't necessarily take things apart and fix things that way. And my mom was an accountant. So I grew up from a young age knowing how to use a spreadsheet, but I didn't necessarily know what all the tools in the house were.
But like what I'm saying is like, you want to get in the nitty gritty of what I deal with. And I know a lot of technicians deal with this. Customers on a regular basis, I have to make these phone calls and upset about pricing. Well, Why is my refrigerant not free? Why is this not free? Why is this not free? That's the kind of stuff that just like at the end of the day, your mind is just like
It's the customer service end of it.
I just
That's what's harder for
I
you.
don't want to even talk about this anymore. I played you that one conversation that lasted for 25 minutes and 26 seconds, and there was no resolution to it. The the customer was not even on subject anymore with what the original complaint was. And by the end of it, what did we figure out? She just wanted to complain about nothing.
But that's the customer service end of it. And I know when we go back to people have different commons for common sense, I grew up in a very customer service driven like lifestyle. I worked at the restaurant with my dad from the time I was 15 on. And that's, I mean, I can't tell you how many times people would get mad at me because the price of wings changed. Like I, as the hostess or the server, was going to change the price of wings. Like they didn't know my father was the owner. And my father was the owner of a couple of the restaurants, not the corporation. He was a franchise owner. So even he had very little say in the changes of the pricing. And so the amount of times people would complain to me about that. That's just how customer service is. And sometimes people just want to complain.
Yep.
And it does suck. And I agree. I understand that. I even see that some as a teacher. And I think that's harder for you, especially when you have to deal with that. And then you have to go out on a roof and fix something and be in the heat and all of that. But at the end of the day, we can't just not talk in our relationship. So we have to find
I'm
out.
not saying talk, but like what happened in the day, I don't need to talk about that. We can talk. We can talk and have adult conversations. No complaining.
I understand, but
This is a
that is
marital
your
counseling session, guys, just so we're all aware.
but that's exactly what we're trying to talk about. Like this communication has to happen, and we're obviously not perfect about it, and we still are working on it. Some I've had to bring up, like you talk about that you don't want to talk about your day anymore, but that is like a big portion of your life. And then when you don't talk about it, I feel excluded from your life, and and then you don't want to listen to my day necessarily. You want to leave work at the door, period, but maybe I need to talk about my work or I want to hear about what happened in your life today. And so that there has to be, it's that balance thing we keep talking about. There has to be that balance. And we're definitely not the answer to all. Like marriage is work. It's rewarding, but it is work and we still got to figure it out ourselves. But we've definitely developed better methods.
Let's take it from someone that has a little bit more knowledge and see what she has to say. Come on over here, Maddie. Come here. So, what about my job drives you nuts? What do you wish I did differently? Am I asking too much of a 6-year-old? Here, you can sit on my lap.
I mean, when you've provided her no context as to what she's doing.
So
maybe.
when Daddy has to leave for work late, and you're getting ready to go to bed, how does that make you feel?
Sad.
Sad? What do you do when I leave for work and you're going to bed? Or if I'm not home and you're going to bed, well, how do you feel?
Make mommy crazy.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Little bit crazy.
That's mommy.
Yeah, that's mommy talking there.
Get your hand out of your mouth. So, what do you do? Like, how do you handle Daddy being gone for work? You don't want to talk?
Just bring it out to come down.
We do sometimes. I wonder if she's talking about sometimes when you were gone, especially for traveling, I would let her sleep downstairs with me.
Okay.
So I think maybe that's what she's referring to. You know, fill out the gap. Daddy's not here, but you get more time with mommy.
Do you like it when I include you in on my hobbies, like when we go in the fast car?
Yes.
Yes. Do you like that I bought you a bow so you can go bow shooting with me?
Yes.
Yeah. What else do I include you in on hobbies that you like?
What do you like to do with Daddy, baby?
What do you like to do with me? Besides sticking your fingers in your mouth?
Shoot airsoft.
Oh, I don't think we're supposed to talk about that on here. Mommy said that she doesn't want to get in trouble for me letting you shoot airsoft guns.
The airsoft is fine.
You like those airsoft guns?
Mm-hmm.
Is Daddy a big gun collector?
Yeah.
Yeah, do I have a lot of guns?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you like the airsoft stuff?
Yeah.
What else do you like that I do with you? Do
Hmm.
you like it when I take you to work?
Yeah.
You know, it's not easy to do that, taking you to work. Do you remember that one time that we went and fixed that freezer together?
It's not easy.
It was not easy.
I mean, she's not easy to keep home with me either.
So, do you like it when I take you to work sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
I do
a
have
lot
an
of times.
yeah, I have an unfair advantage. I do work from the office a lot, and then if there's some troublesome calls, she'll go with me, and she'll hang out because I have some customers that are understanding, and they let me take her in with me.
And what do you usually get to see when you go to Daddy's office?
Ooh, yeah, what's in the office?
Mm.
What does Miss Laura have in the office?
Dog.
Yeah, what are their names? Is it Bella and Bentley?
Bella and Bentley.
Yeah. And then does Jake have a fluffy dog named
Yeah.
Luna?
Yeah.
Yeah, you like the dogs at my office, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
So-
Cute.
All right, you can go back to coloring. So, yeah, I just try and let your family included on some of your stuff. I'm not the best at it. As my wife points out clearly, I'm not the greatest.
I very clearly said we aren't the greatest. We have to grow. And that's an important part of it. It's a partnership and you have to develop the communication and the growth with your partner.
So, a lot of guys ask me all the time, they're like, oh, everything looks perfect with your family. You have this and this and this. This isn't like overnight instant. Like, I had this stuff. A lot of this stuff has been acquired over time. Like, anything my wife and I have acquired, it's been over time. It's not instant. And there's been some struggles and some tribulations with what we've done and what we've learned that works for each other. I'm not gonna lie, I have intentionally driven my wife up a wall sometimes, just because I'm already frustrated and I know that's gonna get her further away from me, and I don't want to talk to her, so I push her even further into that crazy mode. But it's not healthy. It's not good, and I learned that sometimes backing away from work has helped out. I did that with the facilities job. I backed out of that because they were starting to eat up too much time of our family. And I got offered that job with that industrial refrigeration company to take over their controls department, which turned into essentially taking over the company.
Yeah, which
Which-
ended up worse than what
It,
we
which
started
it
with.
ended up worse than the facilities
Mhm.
thing because I did a lot of traveling, and when they started stiffing money and stuff, that's when I was like, it's not worth it, and I moved on. And then I pretty much took over a commercial department for a company and turned it into something different, and put me into the role that I'm at right now, which is right back into management again.
But at least you do end up, you don't have to leave the state.
Yeah, I don't
you
leave the
are at
state. I
home
don't
and-
leave the city. We're here. I do get home late a lot.
And it's not just you who's adjusted your job. For example, I am now teaching virtually. I do teach live classes, but they are through a virtual software similar to Zoom, in order to allow for me to have easier access to be able to accommodate our children's needs, because I had to come to the realization that you're not going to be able to accommodate all of them when I need you to, and this made it easier for us.
So, like, what I want to say is, and I tell my guys this, I don't expect someone to give up their life for a company. Now, if it's your company and you want to give up your life, it's your company. You're taking the reward. That's your life, your reward, right? Is that fair to say?
I would agree. I think one of the biggest concerns with the constant calls and everything is that it is a large company that you've always worked for. Each of these jobs that we're talking about were large companies, and the world and the company was not going to burn down by you not answering.
Yeah.
Now, if it is your own company, the company could very well burn down by you not answering.
But I always tell the guys, I never expect anyone. Now, there are obligations to this job. There is on call. You got to deal with it sometimes, but don't be like, oh, I didn't tell my wife that I was on call this weekend and we have plans and she's upset. That's not my problem. I'm sorry. You messed up. You should have had that conversation with your wife. I've had those tough, difficult conversations with my wife where I'm like, hey, I completely forgot that. How many times have I done that?
I mean, you weren't that bad with when you had the scheduled on call. The bigger thing is more, I forgot I have this appointment and I have to be in earlier, and
Yeah.
I had told you I was going to help with the kids, or I was going to pick up the kids after school for you, but now I've timed later. That
Yeah.
kind of thing. That was bigger for you. But
So that's on you. But I never expect my guys to put in and to sacrifice their families. And most times what happens is I sacrifice my family so guys don't have to. And I'm not saying it's healthy, but you have to balance your family and your life and take care of your family, because if you don't take care of your family, you're going to turn it into a... Can you calm down there for a second, little one? You're like shaking the whole table. You don't have to shake the tablet, okay?
vigorous coloring.
Yeah, vigorous coloring there. You don't have... If you sacrifice your family, it's going to cost you more than just your family in the long run. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you more time. It's going to cost you a lot of headache. I see it with a lot of people in the trades. Don't let this job consume you. It's cool to be the guy that has all the answers and solves a lot of the problems, right? And it makes you feel good. But just remember that you still have a family that counts on you, not just for money.
Hold on, Maddie. Hold on.
That doesn't count on you just for money, but for your time and your energy, and you. Your kids need you, your wife needs you, or your significant other needs you. Remember that. Remember that everybody has to have that time. I know that we're currently in an even worse situation in the trades where we have less staffing and we have a technician shortage, and more companies are requiring more, and they're saying, well, I can replace you. I'll just pay someone more money. It's not the company you want to work for. That's not how I treat employees. I try to give my employees time. Like, I don't know, just the other night, had one guy call me, hey, I need to be off by a certain time. I need to take my kid to the DMV. What day can that be done? And I said, let me look tomorrow. I said, but 7 o'clock at night is not the time to be asking for that. That can wait till tomorrow morning. So next day I found a time and I was like, hey, this day I can let you be done by 11 o'clock and you can take your kid to the DMV and have at it. And then I had another technician that came to me in the morning and said, hey, I completely forgot about this. This is my fault. My wife reminded me, but we're doing this on this day. And it was like 9 days away. And I have a policy. I want 2 weeks notice for time off, especially when it's this time of year. But made it work. I'm not selfish. I'm not greedy. I'm not going to take away time from your family. I want people to have time with their family, even though it seems like my wife thinks that I don't want to spend time with my family.
Don't think that. I just think you need better boundaries at times. We all have things to grow on.
So this is just kind of like, have these conversations with your significant other. Sit down and do something like this. Just have a little chit chat like this, and you can probably solve a lot of problems. Like, hey, this is going on. This is going on. Now, don't make it turn into a fight. And that's a lot of times why I don't want to have conversations, because it winds up turning into a fight rather than just a conversation. I just got that look. So make these conversations productive, and it'll actually make your work life a little better too when you're not stressed out about home. You have to learn to balance the home stuff. So if you guys once again like the content and like what I'm doing with this channel, like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you need to do. Get me some sponsors, and that way I can spend some more money on making this channel better. Hey, Maddie, you got anything you want to say to the people? besides playing with Dozer down there? What do you want to say? Nothing?
Yeah, I want to play Josie.
All right. Go back to playing with Dozer. Here, this guy's got dogs, kids in here.